Computer. Lights.
Good morning, everybody, and happy Friday. Let's see if I've got music going. I got music going. Yeah, music going. All right, today we're going to do a potpourri of stuff because I'm actually not sure if anybody's going to join me. Pepper's on his way on an airplane flight, so he's not joining us. So I don't know who's going to join us today. Maybe nobody, which is entirely plausible. But that's okay because I've got work to do. Boy, do I ever have work to do. I always have work to do. Okay, so I am noticing though this camera is pointed down, so much down. There we go. I try to get a little bit better there. Looks better. And we still don't have broadcast lights correct. Computer, broadcast lights. There we go. Colors need to be different because green and purple are better. Yeah. I'm allergic to Fridays. All right, folks. We were working yesterday on a whole bunch of terminology and things like that. And I wanted to kind of talk a little bit about world building in this instance here because I know that a lot of people are wondering why I'm spending so much time doing world. There is a lot of world in Star Trek. I mean, even if you talk about just the basic tenets of Star Trek, you've got an awful lot of world. And things you don't even think about. You know, people know about dilithium crystals, warp drives, phasers, photon torpedoes. There's a lot of world in Star Trek. So I want to have a world that's as rich as that, which is what I'm after with Bellatrix Rising. Now, on the same token, mostly because a lot of the stories that I wrote for Tamerlane are based on thought processes, thought games, on things that belong to Star Trek. One of the stories that I wrote for Tamerlane was, what do we do? Colton can't make it either. So it's just going to be you and me, I think, because I think Raph definitely isn't going to make it. He never does. So I think we're down to just us, you and me. That's fine. Raph is a super busy dude with Pia and the Iacon stuff and things like that. So he's always busy, which is okay. I just miss him. But that's okay, too. I like my brush. So, anyway, the world building here, by the way, is concurrent with writing of the stories. I'm already writing the stories. I just can't, it's boring for you to watch me write. And I can't talk and write at the same time. So you'd literally just watch me put words on the screen. And I don't know if that would be a good thing. I think you guys would find that to be super boring. So not necessarily one of the things I'm going for. So anyway, we're world building. That's what we're doing. And so we're going to get over here and start world building. What I'm working on today are black cards. And these are the cards that actually there we go. That's what I'm really looking for. These are cards that, okay, see, that's part of our problem right there. We need this to not be pressure. Okay, why are they at 32% opacity? Look at all those stars that just suddenly showed up. I get it now. I've been trying to make these guys show up for a while, and they weren't showing up. Now they're showing up. Good. We're having issues suddenly. Okay. There we go. Okay. So that's what I wanted. Because I actually like there, add a few just random blue stars in there and make the star field look cool. And some yellow stars. There we go. Multicolored stars. Kind of give it some star stuff, looky stuff. I don't even know. I don't know what I'm talking about. It's all right. And what we're doing here is sort of making a backdrop that we can use for the cards that sit behind the card themselves. Anyway, so yesterday when I was working on stuff, I had an epiphany and connected I connected sort of the game, the card game, Black, to the actual deck plans we were working on at that point back then, which is great. Oh, it's done the thing, hasn't it? Dang it. It's decided it decided that whatever it was I was doing, I clearly just wanted to remove vital things. Oh well. Okay, so what I'm doing here is yellow border indicates that it's early in the game. So these are all prototype cards at yellow, right? So I've got these borders that go around the outside edge of this, but this is a basic card. The 10-sider die is the randomizer for the game. It allows me to randomize, you can draw a random card, and that will give you a randomized number at the top of the card. It's also one of the game balancing functions of this card game because I can make more powerful cards have lower numbers in the randomizer. When you have a lower number, you randomly pull, let's say my ship attacks your ship. I do however much damage plus a randomizer. And, so it does 1 plus whatever you draw on the randomizer. The plus on that then becomes, let's say, if it's a super powerful card, you're going to end up with 1. So it does 1 plus 1. That way, if you build your deck with a zillion super powerful cards, you're always doing 1 plus 1 damage, as opposed to 1 plus 9 damage, which is what I would be doing on the way back by putting really weak cards in there that have powerful randomizers. So we're going to talk a little bit about the card itself. I've got an overlay that I'm building into it, which I'm not sure I like yet. I may not. I may just decide I like these two to be moved over here like so, which actually I think is better. And actually we will, then I'll take this part here and we'll move it down. I've got a cool fan. I mean, this guy right here. Yeah, I have a... Interestingly, there's a story behind the fan. But it's got it's an aftermarket thing because I can see that we have this line up there in the ceiling. So I like the fan. It's a good fan. Keeps me cool. It's my only fans. Okay, that joke is not getting old. I'm enjoying that joke a lot. So here we go. Okay, so card design may or may not be exciting and awesome. We'll have to see. Welcome to the show, by the way, Adam. Take this overline here. I actually feel like maybe the overline will just get deleted and then redone. Let's go ahead and put in the 4 traits. Now that I've learned, so one of the things I did do was load a magic card on here and make sure that I had the right height of text, because we know that Magic has already suffered a lot of slings and arrows on trying to get their cards correct. So now I know what the size of things needs to be. And that is, for these guys, we can't be at 6 point. It has to be 8 point. So we're going to take this and bring it up to 8 point. It's fine. Flip it back to normal. And I'm just going to put this here temporarily. As well. I feel like the fan also might be somewhat distracting. Oh. And this one needs to be at 8 point. Photoshop, that actually really was legitimately not what I wanted to do. Let me put tenacity there, maybe. Put it right there. And cunning, and then social right here at the bottom. There we go. Move that there. Move that down to right about there. And move this up there. I can move this guy down just a little bit more. So there. There we go. Card design 101. All right. In the overline, pretty much can just take this curve, cut and paste. One can argue that your statement, I have a cool fan, could also refer to the fact that I have exactly one fan. One person who watches this show. Yep. There we go. And that's what we're looking for. And now we have basic design going here. The overlay needs a little bit of noise added to it. So we're going to do that. We're going to add blending options to it. And when we do, the blending options come up like with all of these different things we can put in here, right? But one of the things I like to do is add textures to the blending options, because the blending options gives us, you know, something that it's just a little bit of something, just something rough to kind of work with here. We got water, do various types of water. I'm noticing though that they have gotten rid of all of my rocks, and I don't know why they've gotten rid of all my rocks. It's almost like they intentionally get rid of the things you use. Because now we've got grasses and stuff like that, and trees and things, and okay, whatever. But like legitimately, the stuff doesn't help me much. Not like my rocks, which I had before, which were really cool. Right. So rocks are there. So grass it is this time. And we can scale it up or scale it down. And we can give it depth, right? Because we don't want a whole lot. We just want a little bit here. Just enough to not make it look flat. And that's really what we're working on here, is trying not to make it look flat. And I like to also give a gradient overlay, because with the gradient overlay, we get sort of what looks like it's lighter to one side and darker to the bottom. You know what I mean? And so for the gradient, I'm actually going to go the other direction and do screen. Let's try to get this kind of going here. Maybe it's overlay that I want. Overlay. And what this also gives is a little bit of a curve up here. You can sort of see like it looks like it's raised, right? Because this is part of the bevel and emboss function. Oh, you know what? I'll bet you they may have moved it to pattern. There it is. That's the pattern we want. We don't want really a bevel and emboss. We want this. That's what we want. There's my rocks. Apparently still not part of the pattern I can use these days, but that's all right. And so I just add this pattern in, there we go, like so. Just enough to give it roughness. You know, this gives it just a little bit of, it's not made like it's, it doesn't look like it's a function, or it doesn't look like it was done in a computer. I mean, I know that sounds silly, but that's really kind of what we're after, not you. So if we wanted to, we could also add an outer glow, which would give it just a little bit of a, like it looks like it's sort of lit up. The function of this is to make it look like a computer projection. That's not you either. They have the ability to bring up holograms on their wrist communicator thing. So I am mimicking that style. There. But this is how we make it. This is how we make it look not so static and rough. Looks like I'm headed into another dark zone here. For those of you who have not watched my show before, in the mornings, I don't know what happens here. I don't know if there's a competition in my neighborhood for who can upload the most data or whatever, but I tend to lose this fight. So sometimes I get rough parts of this. My show gets a little rough and gets kind of weird. And so my apologies if you lose me here. Okay. We can add Commander Chang in here now. She actually looks a little bit better now. I'm actually going to do a little bit of work with her real quick because this was a prototype picture and not actually the real picture that needed to be used for here. But this is a good portrait for at least testing purposes, but it doesn't look good. So what we're going to do is this. I'm going to go ahead and put in the shadow. And we'll put in so we'll start with her shadow. Shadows are done in not Starfields. Hard round. I'm just going to add in some shadow. She doesn't look so weird. She looks kind of weird whenever. There we go, just like this. And it's okay that I go over. Because I want to go back through in a bit and do somewhere I hit the command to hide all of my, it was an accident too, to hide the borders. F11. No, it's not. Hey, Brent. How you doing today? Marking is so much fun. Doing okay, actually. I had a thought last night about the card game, so I'm kind of doing that work today. I was working yesterday on the deck plans. I was trying to kind of concept and idea of what power, what the words for power and things like that. So, what's the dilithium crystals of this story, and what the what is the warp core and all of that stuff. And I realized that halfway through that, I had sort of identified actual numbers for the card game. And that was pretty cool. So then I decided to come back in here and work on the card game a little. And get kind of that kind of thing going for it, which I thought was cool. So now we're doing that. And I'll explain that more in a second because I just want to finish this up real quick. But I realized that when I did the uniforms, the new uniforms, it's always been a card game. You just didn't know it. So okay, well let's switch back to main camera here and let me explain some stuff because actually I think I may have lost you somewhere along the line. So about, I guess it must have been about 8 or 9 months ago, I realized that my card game that I have been working on for a gajillion years needed lore, some kind of lore. Like Magic has, the lore of Magic is that it's two wizards fighting each other, and stuff like that. And so I was like, I don't know what my lore is for my card game, which I have a mechanic for, but not really any lore. And then that my comic book needed a navy. And then I was like, oh, hey, wait, my card game already has a navy, but no lore. And my comic book has lore, but no navies. So I merged the two together. So now they're both. And that really works well. And so all I'm doing here is just connecting the two together. That's all. We're still doing just fine. So nothing's changing. It's just that I've been working on a card game that is it has a certain amount of rules that specifically forbid you from using counters and things like that in construction. That doesn't mean the players can't use counters, but I really liked Magic back in the day in the 90s when we just had a deck of cards in our back pocket and we'd pull out the deck of cards, shuffle it, draw 7 cards, and start playing. So the game that I've been inventing is a space game where good morning, Donald. It's a space game which has all the things I've always wanted in a card game. It has like miniature battles and characters solving problems and stuff like that. And that's like what I always think is a cool game. So I'm building this game, and all I really did was plug Bellatrix into it. So now Bellatrix is the lore behind the card game. That's all. However, it makes for a good way for me to envision and think through characters because there's a character generator for it. So it makes it so that so one of my I'm just gonna grab my stool here and sit down and chat with you guys. One of my biggest problems as a person is that I don't feel like the characters that I create are diverse enough. And I'm not talking about skin tone or anything like that. Like I feel like I keep creating the same type of person over and over and over. So over the last 10 years or so, I have gathered quite a few random generators to randomize personality and give diversity in the people. And I've used those generators to generate all the characters in Bellatrix Rising so that they're all diverse. Because it's the one thing I admire whenever I watch another show is how, the main character will be a dark and broody character, but the sidekick is always like bright and cheery or something like that. And if I wrote it, they'd all be dark and broody. And I'd be like, dang it, why are they all dark and broody? So in doing all of this, I have accumulated a lot of like useful data for creating characters. And I'm like, I might as well put that to use somewhere. And so part of what has been my COVID project here is world building out something that can be played in either a card game format or role-playing game format, or I can just keep building stories out of the universe. All 3 of those things are part of this conglomerate mission that I am on. So we are approaching the end of world building here very quickly, and now entering into like execution. And I'm starting to actually put all of this stuff into play, which is why you're starting to see weird, like, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? And, it's like all of this is part of my grand plan, so to speak. Yes. I actually was for a long time using the MBTI functions, but I'm discovering a thing called Hexaco, which I like a whole lot better. It's the persona and quirks, right? I mean, like, you're absolutely right. What we know about Chang, yay, comics. You're like, comics, can we do the comics? Brent says. The comics are definitely the core. But there's an entire universe here. I mean, things we know about Chang as a character is like she had a daughter and she's broody and stuff like that. She's my broody character. So I need to make sure that I have an offset for her, because when I created Mayrel came out broody and dark. And when I created Bennett came out, loves her coffee. She likes her coffee. She's not very good with computers, things like that. She has all the traits of Cochrane. She's snarky, and Chang very much is snarky, like Mal from Firefly and stuff like that. So there's a lot of things going on that I'm trying to... Right. And that's the other thing, is buy-in, so to speak. You know what I mean? It's like when you have a big universe and you set up, say, like a basic role-playing system, and the system that we role-play, you have this basic role-playing system that's kind of going on. It's great. You all can role-play in the universe. I've got zillions of planets that I've built and stars, and it's ridiculous. It is totally ridiculous. It's ridiculous how much stuff I've got out here. And all of this is great because now we can have all kinds of stuff going on. We can do role-playing games and things like that in the Bellatrix Rising universe. Right? So now I'm looking for, I have my randomizer book. And I had things, where's page 1 of my randomizer book? Here it is, or page 2. Here's a great example of and it's hard to read, but that is my random character generator, right? This is completely divided up by US population distribution, not by world population distribution. But it gives you, right here, you've got gender. So you can just roll 10-siders. 1 to 50 gives you male. 51 to 00 gives you female. Then over here, you do your race by distribution of, at the US as of 2017. Right? And so then over here, you do eye color, hair color, and sexual orientation, weight distribution. Then we roll down here to what kind of personality you've got, right? And these are all just based on the personality types of the Briggs-Meyer test, which, by the way, is not very accurate. However, it works good for you to just get a basic character type, right? Do you get someone who's dutiful, practical, logical, and methodical, or do you get somebody who's determined, innovative, strategic, and outgoing? That kind of combination. What's the character's basic personality type? And I can just roll randomly. And I found somewhere, and I've never been able to find it again, the percentage of how much of the population is each type. So I quickly put that in here, which gives me a nice, randomized basic setup for a character. So I just go get 10-siders. Grab my 10-siders over here. Right? Pull out the dice and grab some 10-siders. And all I need to do is use my 10-siders and just roll on there, and I get 88. So 88 in the distribution puts the person as Asian, right here. And 84. Asian female. So roll 44 with brown hair, right? Or brown, wait, 44. 44 is brown hair. Yeah, brown hair. And 92 blackish eyes. Black eyes does not mean like they've gotten a black eye, right? And 81. Boy, these dice like to roll 80s. 81 means that they're in the heterosexual. And 12 means that they're average height. 12 again. Man, these dice really are an average weight. Oh, wait. Average height, average weight. Yep. And then we just roll the 90. Puts them in ESFJ. Friendly, practical, loyal, and organized, right? So there we've just done a quick, right? These dice were really into killing off your character. Let's see if Gen 4 dies. Gen 4 dies again. So, but that's like, this is my basic character generator. Now, I follow it in whatever way I follow it. Like, sometimes I'm like, nope, that character has to be a foil for this other character. But anyway, that's how I do basic character generating. Well, that's the thing, Gen 4. What you don't know is that I'll roll the dice and go, see, here are my dice. I'll roll them. Oh yeah, you certainly died there. That was a 0. No, really. Good hero has sidekicks. So I have a number of these random generator things that I use for all kinds of stuff. But the new thing I'm really into these days is this Hexaco personality. Damn it, Jim. This Hexaco personality model, which I'm very intrigued by. This is a new setup of how people work. Hexaco personality model. 6 dimensions. So it's honesty and humility, emotionality, extroversion, agreeableness, consciousness, and openness to experience. Which that, if I could figure out what the distribution of people in America, or well, America ideally is, America is not ideal. However, and by the way, if you guys are wondering what that would be, if this was the world, then you'd have like the world distribution. It would be heavily weighted to be Asian, because India and China are 2 of the most populous countries in the world. So it would heavily weigh, your odds would be much, much higher to be either Chinese Asian or Indian Asian. Yep, you have to make a God call now. So anyway, so I just made it. I could find easy facts on the distribution of race and gender and all of those things in the US population, but I couldn't find easy enough facts for the world. And I sort of then made a decision process that maybe I was going to just base it solely on that. However, in the last few years, our population has shifted. And so I need to change those numbers again. which is all right. Because I actually kind of like, I'd like a little bit more of a chance of diversity on those roles. Because right now they are heavily weighted towards just one racial type. And it'd be nice if there was some more diversity in that role. So there's nothing you can do. I might just, India has passed China. But either way, if you were to do a world distribution of racial archetypes, you're going to end up with a whole lot, like 65 or 70% chance of being Chinese or Indian by world distribution, because they take up a huge chunk of our population. So I'm trying to decide whether I should just go for a uniform, like you have an equal amount of chance of being each racial type, which could be interesting. The sheet that I made before was based on me making characters for role-playing games here in America. And now that I'm kind of thinking of making a new version of this for Bellatrix Rising, it would have to be based on the amount of population that was rescued from Earth in the story, which wasn't an equal distribution. Because it all depended on whether the country tried to shoot at the rescue ships or not, or whether the rescue ships managed to make it out in time, or whether they were destroyed in the cataclysm, or you know what I mean? Like, so it ends up being a random mess of cultures anyway. So it could just be uniform. They managed to grab just kind of a random amount of people. I could probably, since it's random, just say, well, here we go. We got 12% of, what is it with these dice in 12? 12% of the people were, one race, and 5% were another race, and 63% were another race, and, 33% were another race, or whatever. And I could just randomly decide. And the remainder were this race. And that might not be a bad plan. Have to think about it, because I actually never really thought of what the distribution was. I know that it wasn't Yep. Well, and that's the thing, right? In the story, the ships all landed on Earth knowing the cataclysm was coming. But since Earth was dark at the time, suddenly it was, it was here today. And then all these UFOs land and open their doors and say, everybody get on board. And you're like, yeah, okay. And so that, some people shot at the ships and, bam, 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 and then ran for their lives, and nobody would get on board. And, everybody was terrified. And, so it was kind of like the Vogon construction fleet, except instead of destroying Earth to make way for a hyperspace bypass, they were, trying to get in there and rescue everybody. So there's that. Roll the dice. So anyway, I don't think it would just be the Americans. I'm pretty sure that the Russians would have shot at them too. Australians probably would have done something of that sort. But people are going to have adverse reactions to it. So, so then you have a world where, there are fewer Americans or whatever, because the Americans decided they weren't going to submit or whatever. I don't know. I don't really want to get it's hard to get too deep into that thought process, because the question really then is, how badly do you want to make a stupid statement, right? How many people on Earth were stupid? And do you want to actually make a statement that says, yeah, all the Australians didn't make it because they were all too stupid? And then you start making statements like that. And then people are like, my guy thinks that Australians are stupid, you know? So it's like, I'm almost tempted to just roll the dice on everything and say X number percentage of people in each zone, like X number of North Americans, you know, okay, how many North Americans? 78% of North Americans made it, you know what I mean? Or something like that. And then, you know, how many South Americans? 29% of South Americans made it. And, you know, you just keep rolling the dice, and 26% of Africans made it. And then, you know, 42% of Europeans made it. And then that way it's not a statement. You know, how many people were too stupid? It was a dice roll. And then you can say, well, the rest of them were too stupid, or whatever. The characters can make that comment, depending on what the characters feel. Chang, of course, is a different creature. She came from one of the offshoot weird things where a Chinese group of people formed their own isolationist culture. Right. I mean, and plausibly, that's what happened. Why did you get 78% of North Americans, but only 29% of South Americans? It's because the North Americans all got out there, and the president got on the TV and said, "Everybody, get into the spaceships now! It's an emergency." And everybody went, "Oh, okay." And in South America, everybody had a squabble or something, and who knows? And they all got into infighting, or, you know, and then they wouldn't get broadcasting or whatever, you know. You can that can lead to its own story as to why that didn't work. But you're right. I mean, it could be anything. I would assume if I were trying to rescue a planet, like, you know, thinking from the point of view of Star Trek, you know, let's say we're Federation officers, all of us, on our Federation starship. And we're coming up to a point where we have to rescue a planet that doesn't, you know, like the Mentakans or something like that, where they don't know that, or they still perceive people as, or aliens as scary or something like that. I would guess that would be my first thought, is to try to talk to them. But this was hours. They had hours. That's all they had. It's not like they had days to rescue everybody. Yeah, right? I mean, the Federation just beamed down people to the United Nations in the middle of session and say, "Okay, guys, no, seriously, this is a problem, and we've got to get you out of here now." And there's no discussion. Anybody who's left here will die. End of story. You know. And I'm sure that's exactly what would have happened logically. The Coalition of Worlds, which is what it was called at the time, would have, because this is before Unity and before the Commonwealth and things like that in the story. Anyway, it's the thought process. Interesting thought experiment, which is, what would have happened if we had to rescue the world? How would we go about rescuing the world? I'm sure that at some point in time, I mean, that's another one of those things. Since it was a coalition of multiple ships, I am sure that there were at least one or two ships who would have come down and said, "We're rescuing you." And then shots would have whizzed by their heads. And they're like, "You know what? Everybody go grab guns and say, 'You're coming with me now.'" You know, I'm sure they were like just helping to reinforce the belief. So it wouldn't just be how many people on Earth were stupid. How many of the ship captains decided, "I'm fed up with trying to convince you. I'm just going to point my guns at you." And once they do, that gets broadcast all over the world, right? I mean, you know, that's going to totally be that way. Right? Right? Just zorp. beam them all into cryo storage. That's funny. Yeah. Anyway, Kirk would stun them all. Phasers to stun. Pew! Bark. Everybody just falls over. Thump. Yep. That'd be in a piece of the action. Just saying. Anyway. So I have decided that in my role-playing game and my card game, we have 3 primary attributes: tenacity, cunning, and social. Tenacity is both how dedicated you are to your skills and how well you live. Like, it's your health bar, so to speak. So I also call that drive. So like there are certain people out there that are just stupid driven, right? And I've got a friend who has a daughter. She's 16 and she already has pilot's license and car license. And she's a lieutenant in the Civil Air Patrol. And you know what I mean? Like, she's driven. She was the captain of the soccer team. She was the captain of her basketball team. She, just like ridiculous. She makes us all look bad. She's done more in 16 years than I've done in 50. So, there's that. She would have a high tenacity skill. So whatever she aims for, she gets and does because she just guns for it. Cunning, on the other hand, is the Kirk skill. How well or the Scotty skill. How well do you fix the warp core with 3 seconds remaining on the clock? How well do you convince the Snurgle-Bladians to not attack your world? Stuff like that. Social, then, is how well do you interact with people? Are you an extrovert? Are you an introvert? Things like that. In the game terms, cunning are things where you're trying to do challenges, like challenge to build a thing or do stuff. Social is how you interact with other people, so convincing people, intimidating people, things like that. And then I decided I wasn't even going to mess with strength because that's actually kind of a skill if you think about it. You go out and you decide to dedicate hours to doing a thing, so every 2,000 hours that you dedicate to a project is 1 skill point in the game. So if you were to spend 5 skill points on strength, then you would have 10,000 hours in strength, which is about what we would say for you to be perfect at a job or perfect at a skill. So that's what I came up with. So strong is a skill. That way you don't have to worry about, everybody is pretty much human strength, whatever that is, a generic human strength. So that's what these 3 skill things mean. So there you go. Also, what we didn't here, let me show you yesterday what we did on this, completing up my Seabird class stuff and getting all of the wording correct in here. Now we have the Idris turbine, which sits right up here. And I think that my kiddo came up with the perfect science fiction sounding thing. Because it's awesome. It's an object that has, what was it, more corners than sides? Yeah, more corners than sides. So, or more corners than, No, more corners than sides. Let me see if that works. 10, 10, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's more sides than corners. That's what it is. It's more sides than corners. So it's like a tesseract in A Wrinkle in Time. The core power source of the ship is this object that has more sides than corners. So it's an impossible object, which causes a fifth dimensional like stressor, and that stressor generates electricity. However, the output is in exajoules, which we don't actually, the entire Earth doesn't generate 1 exajoule yet. So this ship generates already 5 times the maximum amount of power that all of Earth generates. But my buddy James and I have been talking a lot about the concept that space travel, especially faster than light travel, will require much more power than we can conceive. So there's no way you can actually comprehend the amount of power that would have to be used to do space travel in a reasonable way. This is a lot of what Isaac Asimov was talking about, and some of the stuff is what Arthur C. Clarke was talking about when they talk about space travel. Either you don't have faster than light travel, at which time everything is way too far apart. You will literally evolve into a different creature before you reach destinations, right? Because it will be generations of you. And so you will evolve into space-bearing creatures by the time you reach the next destination. If you do have faster than light travel, then there's just so much real estate that there's no way to cover all of it, right? Because it's like, how much of the world do you see from the interstates of America? And if you're looking for grains of sand and you have to drive at interstate speeds 70 miles an hour, how many grains of sand will you see? Not many, right? So there's these double problems that go on with writing sci-fi in a realistic setting. So one of the things that they also said was just traveling the speed of light will require an insane amount of power, more than what we've got today, more than nuclear power. It will take something else. So my kiddo, who's really sharp, came up with this idea of this object that doesn't exist well in our universe. So it's solar wind is still only traveling at subliminal speeds, so it's below the speed of light. No matter what, it's going to be, even if because it's pushing at the speed of light, but there's no way to push an object to that same speed, not inside a system, because your particles get weaker as you get further away. The wind blows less as you get further away from the source. So, part of it is that. It's not that solar wind is not possible. I'm sure that there'd be solar sailors. And obviously, there are bits. There are things where you take concessions. Because you're right, run into giant fast solar eddies. Concessions to make the story better. In the case of Bellatrix Rising, there's weather. I noticed when I looked at maps. I'm going to move this over here so I can see it better. When I looked at maps, in the grand scheme of things in Bellatrix Rising, there are structures I can see. I can literally see these structures in our galaxy, right? So if we are far enough out to look at, and I'm trying to get up to the outer version of our map. Yeah, here we go. Right? I can see operational structures in our map, right? I can see things where this is where we are in this bubble right here. In fact, the green dots represent all. These green dots represent all of our universe, right? There's Earth. Here's the Commonwealth. Here's all of Unity, and this is the Pleiades, and back here is the Beehive, right? So we look at just our section of the universe, or our section of the galaxy, and this is just a spur. It's not even a full arm. It's a spur of the arm. And you can see structures in it. We can see, like, there is, it's goo. Everything is goo. If you think about, like, what was that slime that we would get as kids? Yeah, it's like that. It was like a plastic slime, but it wasn't, I don't know. It wasn't like Play-Doh. It was less cohesive. But it's slime. Everything is slime, and it's all moving in a slimy way, right? Because that's the way gravity works. Gravity works in the same way as that cohesive stuff in the slime. It holds for a bit and then kind of hangs on a little, and you get like bits that are kind of clumped together in a group, and it's trying to grab another clump behind it, and then finally lets go of it, and you end up with little bubbles, and yeah, it's totally gross. Everything is gross. The entire galaxy is just slimy. But that is like the nature of everything. There are bits and pieces of the galaxy that are still pulling, and they've got tenuous connections to other pieces, and you've got clumps, and there's groups and things like that. But everything is being pulled like pizza dough. If you pull pizza dough and you look at the part where it's in the center of the pizza dough, you get these strands that do this kind of, like, you can see through them, strand things, right? Where it's open because it's pulling apart, right? That's what you've got in the galaxy. It's doing the same thing. But that means that we have strands and threads and clumps and bits and pieces through the galaxy, which is great, because that means that when your ship is flying around, you have to slow down because you're going through this strand, and we can speed up because there's no strand here, but now we have to slow down because there's a clump, or we have to speed up, and all of that's gravity. It's all going to be in gravity groups. It's some gravity, it'd be like gravity shears and gravity eddies, and it's all gravity, because it's going to be these groups of things. I like that Gen 4 is like, it's gross. It's all just gross. Snot. That's it. Our entire galaxy is snot. We have made the statement. It is made. I have spoken. Plants of boogers. That's exactly it. And thank you, Gen 4, because there are lots of bodily fluids we could have gone to, and that's probably the best of the lot. So we'll hold there. But yeah, so to work with what you're saying, Donald, it's totally like that. We've got ocean currents and eddies, and it's going to be all kinds of crap all over the place. Ride the galactic mucus. So there you go. I think it's interesting, though, because, like, in a way, it really is kind of like that. You know, it's going to be all kinds of stuff. But I also think the cool part about this is some of it will move fast, but only in small areas. Most of it will move slow, right? Like galactically slow. And so people will be identifying the areas, yeah, right? Areas between, where all of this stuff gets pulled apart. They're going to name these things because it's not going to move. It's going to keep pulling apart, but it's going to pull apart over millions of years. So in the snapshot of now, it's not going to pull apart in our lifetime. Heck, we're not going to even be humans by the time it finally pulls itself apart. So that makes for an even cooler effect. Okay, how do I get back the things that went away? Somewhere along the line, I was pulling this thing down for looking around things, and it got rid of the toolbars at the bottom, got rid of all of the control handles, everything went away. And it decided that was the command I gave it, and now I can't figure out how to get it all back. It's kind of irritating. Because now I don't know how to fix it. Because now I can't close this because they're all full screen now. The galactic mucus. The galactic mucus. So, anyway. So there you go. That's I guess I'm not ranting per se, but I am on a sort of a large overview feel for the whole thing. So the universe that we're building here has all kinds of things in it now. And now I have identified, like we've got the entire complement of the Corvette as to who's on board. We've figured out the Idris turbine, which is a single point distortion on this ship, so it only generates a small amount of power. And by a small amount of power, it's only 5 times the amount of power that all of the Earth makes in a day. And it's got, I went to the random name generator and got random names for the fuels the ship uses because that was cool. And that made me happy. So it runs on Reslian, which is what this tank is right here. It's a Reslian tank that feeds the turbine, and the turbine generates electricity. And then back here are the real space engines that make it crawl. And it crawls along space by grabbing bits of space-time and pulling it like a rowing machine. And that pulls the ship along. But that makes it very agile, but also doesn't do major damage to the world around it. So you use the space maneuver and crawl drives to get into dock and out of dock and stuff like that, because that way you're not damaging other spaceships. When you're away from those, then you use these huge gravity plates on the top, these projection plates, and that produces a black hole straight in front of your ship, and then your ship falls towards the black hole and you are off to the races. And so that's fine, but you don't want to generate a black hole right next to a space station, because then your space station will go into the black hole. So there's that. So instead, you use the crawl drives whenever you're near other objects. The crawl drives use Coblium, another randomly named generated things. Coplex is the name of the company that does Coblium hybrid. TC2, which is it's like RP1. That's the joke I'm making. RP1, TC2, you get the idea. Yeah, actually, that was another thing that James and I were talking about yesterday, is the scale of which wars take place when you have 5 exajoules of power at your disposal is super dramatic. Like, really dramatic. Some of the technology that has to happen is, you've seen all of my ships have huge fins. They've got these massive fins. Even the Seabird class Corvette has 2 fins. Those fins touch space-time, and they look for gravity pull, a gravity distortion, and that's what they're searching for. So some call those spider legs, because the concept is the same as the legs of a spider when it puts a web out and then touches the web strands and waits for it to tug, and that's when it knows it has something on the web. These plates that go into the fins that go into space-time can sense pulls across the space-time when the space-time fabric gets pulled by a gravity distortion. And that allows you to see things faster than light, because space-time moves as a fabric. So it doesn't move at a propagation of space of light speed. It just moves by function. So when space-time moves, it violates Einstein's theory of relativity naturally, and it can be detected moving. That's how you prevent planets from getting bombarded, because a superluminal or even just subluminal rock, all I need to do is take a rock and accelerate it to 0.9 the speed of light and strike Earth with it, and it will destroy the entire planet. It'll wipe the planet off the map. It is gone. So right, well, that's the thing, right? So we have control of gravity and space-time, right? If you fire the Macross cannon at my planet, right, I'm going to put a huge gravity well about, I don't know, 3 light seconds away from my planet, and your beam is going to go warp and just be warped around that gravity well, right? So that's how war is fought, is by producing gravity wells to deflect beams so that they don't actually hit your target. And that's the whole point. With the sensors, we can see disruptions in space-time. So as soon as your ship fires the gun, it disrupts space-time. The sensors see that, plot the distance for it, put a gravity well just off center, and that deflects the beam out so it misses the planet. And that's how that all works, which is a much more bizarre and complicated space battle system, you know. So that's the way that goes. So the whole thing is to overwhelm your opponent, right? More targets than the computer can deal with. So you're actually better off using missiles and firing a ton of them into the area, so that you've got a bunch of drones going different directions. And then, but I mean, you know, then it's up to how many people can you control, how many drones can you control, versus how many drones that I can shoot down. You know what I mean? So then it becomes a game of... Yes, that is exactly what happens. I deflect it into the sun. I'm actually sure that's probably exactly what they do. They probably take that beam and deflect it straight into their sun. Suns burn ridiculous, so they would just eat it up. You know. That's how you do planetary defense, though. Starship defense is a little different. The Corvettes rely heavily on the fact that they're teeny, and it's really hard to hit them because they're not easy to hit. And that's kind of a thing, is that, you know, these Corvettes are going to weigh heavily on the idea. Yeah. And then the solar flares, right? And it's just like, off comes the side of the star, you know, like flaring and stuff. See you later. Oh, love to you and Brad. See you later. Bye-bye. So where were we? Fighting in battles here. That's what we were talking about. Anyway, I really don't know what happened to, hang on real quick. I don't even know what to call these things. We got a problem here. I'm trying to figure out how to make it all make sense here. I really don't know what command I did to make all of this stuff go away. No. Oh, man. Huh. No, that's not what I want. I was wondering if maybe I hit this. That's mask. It won't work. That's also true. I mean, that definitely could be the thing, right? Or, you know, flea flickers. You know, I'm shooting my missiles this way, not really at you. And then you put a black hole right here, so that whenever the beam goes here, and then ends up going that way, right? And so, you know, you don't see the black holes that you're putting into place, so it makes it so that the beam looks like it's going this way. So you're like, oh, good, they screwed up. They didn't shoot straight at us, and then whang, you know, and then all of a sudden it goes around a black hole and heads straight for you. You know, you're right. That's totally the chess match. Would be to take large beam weapons and then stick black holes in the area. But that also means that it's treacherous, because any gravity field adds weather to the superluminal area, the hyperspace or the in space, which is one of the reasons why it's very important for star systems to keep a map of what's going on and transmit that out. I say this because the very first scene of issue 1 of our comic talks about them arriving at Moment without the weather report. And that's the entire thing, is they don't have a weather report, so they don't know what the situation is in Moment. And so they're trying to arrive blind. It's landing at an airport without lights on, without control towers, without anything. They're landing blind. And, you know, and in the rain and the fog, you know, so that kind of stuff. Yes, that's exactly what happens. The gravity crap, especially since there's a pollution of gravity, right? So as time goes on, remember how I said those strands are all not moving over millions of years? But if ships keep plying those things, they'll keep messing them up. And here, I'll show you what I mean. We'll just put a new thing, right? If we've got sort of, let's go for, right? We've got this gravity thread, right? Which looks like this. And we know that if you have a ship and our ship is traveling from here to here, let's do a different color. Let's do red. So the ship is traveling from here to here. Now it knows that at this point it has to slow down, and at this point it can speed back up. This is just how the way that the rules of the universe that I have created. Okay. So not a problem. We get that. That makes total sense. Actually, let's put it on a different layer, right? So here's our ship. Here's where it has to slow down. Here's where it has to speed up. Okay. We can map this. And now you know this is called the Cumberland Gap, and this is called the, I don't know, the Donald Gap, and that's fine. We know this. The problem is that somewhere along the line, we had another ship travel this way along the gap, right? And when it did, it didn't go completely straight. It's like any good ship. It tootled around, right? And caused a certain amount of eddies to occur back here, right? And it causes this, let's give it a little bit more strength. It causes these eddies to occur like this as the ship goes along it, right? Sort of disrupting the way that the space works here, especially when it's closer to this structure, right? Now, when we look at where this guy needs to enter, technically speaking, his interzone has moved out. The gravity eddy that's there now has moved probably half a light year, right? Could be anything. So now you have to redo your map so that it no longer says this, because this isn't the interzone anymore. The interzone has moved, and the interzone is now here, right? Whereas before it was here. And this is how it's getting polluted. These threads, the more traveled threads, the more time you travel through them, the more you disrupt and mess up the clouds and the gravity wells. And you get right. And that's probably exactly what you have. You have SDOT, the Space Department of Transportation. And that's what SDOT does, is goes in here with some kind of massive pushing device and pushes as much as possible this way. Try to keep kind of sweeping things back into place, But also what you'll probably end up with is you'll end up with an established trade route, right? I mean, this is the established trade route. Do not deviate from this. So when your starship is traveling along like this and then starts doing this number or whatever, you're going to have like police who are really trying to desperately get you to not do that anymore, because SDOT, I like SDOT. SDOT has already pushed this back and cleaned it up so that the entry gates are correct and the exit gates are correct. This is kind of cool, actually, because now we've got kind of a thought process of how this all works, the logic of why space does what space does. It's kind of cool. But you also have all kinds of stuff. Somebody drops you get somebody who decides that they're going to have a war in here, right? And we end up with somebody who drops a big bomb right there. Then you've got this massive, we don't know what the heck's going on here, sort of mess up where it's just completely screwed up space right here. Right? And doing that means that this becomes someplace where S dot has to go out and put don't travel here advisories. And like, no, some idiot 20 years ago set off a bomb here. There's nothing. Just don't. You can't travel through this zone. More importantly, as space gets like, yeah, right. Well, and then later on, some other idiot then goes in here and then bombs this area, right? And now that's all messed up and screwed up, right? And now SDOT has all these warnings that are out here, but this area is still a threat. And so now SDOT has to go out and say, damn it, you people, stop having wars. Right? I like SDOT. SDOT. Space Department of Transportation. Poor SDOT, folks. And of course, every ship that goes through here is, even if they don't mean to, they're going to disrupt it a little bit, right? They're going to disrupt it coming in. They're going to disrupt it coming out. And it's going to be just a little bit disrupted every time. And every time they're going to just pull a little bit in there or whatever and pull back a little. So SDOT's going to have to go through and clean that up every time. In fact, I love the idea that we have road workers. And that's your entire job. You go out there in your little spaceship and you fly back and forth with a huge gravity well, placing everything back in place, Right? We keep your rear from dragging the wrong place. So these are all things that's kind of cool to think about, right? We're doing big brain stuff today. We're thinking it all through and kind of coming up with these ideas and these thoughts. It's kind of cool. It's actually really cool. So I'm pretty pleased. One of the things that we're thinking about here are bits and pieces that make things much more real when we get to that story part, right? I mean, part of this is that we're thinking about how to do various conceptual things, but this also works in the story, because any one of these can be a plot point now. You know, Captain's log, stardate 1234.5. We are rescuing an S. spaceship, which stuck in the area here, and it's going to be a rough landing. Luckily, our pilot is very good. Cut to our pilot sweating. You know, any of these can be now used as an entry point to a story, and a plot point can be used. So that's a thing. Definitely an option. I like this. This is really cool. So I'm going to go on ahead before I forget all this stuff. That's always something that happens. No, it's not a thread. It's a thread. Slow gravity thread. Fast gravity area. And gap. Right? 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 Every time I do this, I imagine that scene from the opening credits of Star Trek Voyager, where Voyager is cutting through those clouds and getting those eddies behind her as she just keeps cutting through, and you can see the forward shields pushing the cloud away, and it's just right off of that forward deflector shield. And in the aft section, the clouds are just whoo, whoo, and there's eddies behind it. And I feel like, that's exactly what's going on here. The ship travels along this gravity field, and you get these whoo, 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 gravity eddies that come out behind it, which causes, because that gravity ball is pulling the gravity thread with it, which pulls these like sections of it away from it. And then S. has to go in there and specifically say, stop doing that. Yeah, actually, so there is a party that we haven't really been talking about. We've talked about the Unity, we've talked about the Commonwealth, and those two are enemies. They're in a Cold War as we start this story. But there is still Silver Cove, which is the original landing of humans 100 billion years ago, 500 years ago, right? Is Silver Cove. Those people who put out the original Constitution, that group still exists. They just don't fight. They don't get into anybody's arguments or anything like that. It's plausible that they are a neutral entity. So this S. could be part of that neutral entity. Or Unity is responsible for Unity's gravity threads, and the Commonwealth's responsible for their gravity threads. The truth of the matter is these gravity threads are huge. When we look at, say, in here, we look at our local group area, and the threads are huge. Like, this, right? So, all of this gray area is a slowdown. And since Bellatrix is over here, and in through here will be a bunch of stars that live in these slowdowns, then you end up with sort of a problem trying to travel this way vertically. Let's get it bigger. Trying to travel this way across these threads. So you can move in here and then move this way and these little like runs that are in between. But this is exactly what I was talking about when you talk about things where they're getting pulled apart. And it depends on where you are in the altitude. Yeah, they are the Swiss. But that's where I was making all of these maps before, because there's now like spaces where, you travel. That's another thought, though. Would there be tunneling? Right. Exactly. Like if you come through here with your ship in this Monknia threads, which goes like this, the next level up, this is one continuous thread. But at plus 50 light years, or plus 50 light year or parsecs, it becomes a moving lake. If you're coming along here and you decide to jump this gap instead of doing what you should do, which is up and then down, kind of follow the thread as the thread does this. If you decide to go through the gap, it's going to cause eddies through that gap, right? And it'll tear through some of this as you go through it. Not only that, it'll really mess up your ship. So you don't want to do that. But let's say you did. Once you do, it tears that whole thing apart. And you're right, you'd end up with this moving lake that's going with you of disrupted gravity eddy. The big thing when we look at that other picture we just did, this one, is this is the stuff that'll start happening, right? Because this is 100% slowdown. Then this is 100% speed. This becomes 52% and 30% and 40% and 90%. And then, you know what I mean? It's like, you don't know what your speed level is going to have to be now when you go through it, because the gravity eddies get all kinds of screwed up. You're going to end up with threads and lines that are half of a ship width across. So instead of having a very clean defined line where you have to slow down through here, you're going to end up with fast, slow, 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 really slow, really, really fast, slow, and you're going to have this like speed gradient where you have to do this like weird thing. And the problem is space size, because you could just say, well, we're going to treat all of this as if it was 100%. Well, that becomes from here to here is going to take 3 weeks to travel, whereas from here to here will take 1 hour, right? Because you're at this speed, which slows you down so much that it's very much like what happens if you are on a freeway and the car in front of you drops a whole bunch of wreckage on the road. You could drive at full speed and just go, wah, and hope that your car does this number and makes it through all the wreckage without hitting anything. But really what you're going to do is slow down to, 30 miles an hour so you can navigate it nicely, The problem is that this becomes wreckage over a 7-mile span of the highway, right? Right, exactly. And that's the thing. Like our little Corvette's a very small ship. If it gets into this eddy, it's going to destroy it, right? It's not a big ship. So our captain's going to have to slow her all the way down. A big battleship or a dreadnought, she's pretty strong. She might make it through with just minor damage. But our Corvette, she's not going to have any fun going through that. So the more disrupted space becomes, the worse it is. Wonder if there would be like an angel's effect. Wonder if I could go full screen and come back. Yay! Everything came back. Good. That's nice. Wonder if we'd have like different things. Now I can click on the tabs up here. That's what I was really after, was these tabs. We don't need to worry about this card because we've already stolen its information, right? And I got these wonderful threads and stuff like that. But would we just stay at one level? We might stay at one level and only dive down. Yeah, you need some serious piloting skill to do that. And that's the other thing, is remember that in space, you can't use computers. It has to be flying by the seat of the pants of the captain or the pilot. The pilot has to be flying literally with the controls in her hands. So she will be, steering and pushing and pulling and, driving down and up and pushing buttons and clicking things. It's not pleasant. And then you have the wash thing. Oh God, we're all going to die. So there we go. Wow, we have done some really cool and fascinating concepts today. We've talked about how space works. We've created SDOT. I love SDOT. I don't think it'll end up being SDOT, but that's okay. Oh, we didn't get to talk about some of the funny things I came up with yesterday because we didn't talk about this, but IDRIS, IDRIS, is an acronym for extra-dimensional spatial distortion system, right? Which doesn't fit because, of course, they're not speaking English. So, right, now's a bad time for me to have to run to the bathroom. I'm sorry. You drive. That would suck. You're right. So the other thing is distortion defense. Like, this ship has distortion defense. So it projects gravity plates and eddies around it. Because the truth is, there's no point in armoring a spaceship. There's no armor that you could build that could deal with an exajoule of power being put into it. So what you do is you put up gravity walls, and the walls make the masers run around it. And you hope that you can find weaknesses in the gravity walls. Right? Time for you to have cross-trained for command. Aren't you? Your life sucks. So, but yeah, that's so the gravity generators up here will generate deflector walls, but it can't pull the ship while doing that. That becomes sort of a thing. So the truth of the matter is that, as soon as somebody attacks another ship, that other ship has to go out of drive and use the crawlers to move the ship around to defend, and then use the gravity walls to deflect the masers, the incoming masers. Right? So, it's one of those, you either project the carrot drive that pulls the ship along, or you project gravity walls. In fact, I think I'm going to call them gravity walls instead of shields, because I think that gives a better concept and becomes less Star Trek, right? Now we're moving into another term that can die. We don't raise shields, we drop the ball and then raise the gravity walls. So take the ball out and then raise the gravity walls. But we also have to be cognizant that the ship will move towards gravity walls, right? You put up a gravity wall and it's going to fall towards that gravity wall because it'll be effectively putting up the ball, except you're putting up a strong gravity wall so that whenever the maser comes at it, it's deflected or bent around it or something like that. So, cool. We'll call that gravity walls too. Put the airborne in. Really? I have no idea why airborne is considered to be like this bizarre Hebrew. It isn't Hebrew. I don't know what that's about. Maybe it wouldn't be sans 4. I'm just putting up the basic concepts here so that I don't have to worry. Crazy game of chicken, yeah. I also think that we're talking about an amazing distance in space. But then you can also do the same tricks that you were just talking about before, where I put up a gravity wall and then you put up a ball right here so that it comes up and then swips around the ball and still hits my ship. I also think that you can't put up gravity walls everywhere. It'll tear the ship apart. So, because you can't put up gravity walls on either side of the ship would then pull to each gravity wall, right? There's a certain amount of fall to each gravity wall. So every time I put up a wall, my ship's going to fall towards it. If I put up another wall here, my ship's going to fall toward it that way, which is going to make... And so the point is that the gravity walls will only pop into place at the split second that the blast hits it. So it's going to want to bring up the gravity wall just in time to deflect the blast and then turn the gravity wall off. Because if it keeps it on, the ship's going to fall towards it, and ultimately, you'll move the ship out of the way. But it does mean that if you're in a fight, in a firefight, and your gravity wall team is back there, putting up walls and dropping them and putting them in place and then dropping them to try to block all the shots, it means that your flight is going to be kind of like this, as those gravity walls show up and pull the ship in different directions. Because that'll be kind of interesting too. Fighting will be difficult. It won't be... That makes ship-to-ship battles tough. Well, you can throw somebody into a black hole, right? I mean, I could quite literally, here's your ship. I throw a black hole here. Your ship goes right into the black hole. But we do have control of gravity. So the other thing that I can produce is the opposite of well, I mean, you put a gravity wall there and it won't matter, right? Here's your black hole. Here's the gravity wall. There's no gravity here in the Lie because they're both pulling against each other. And it would, yeah, I could pull you back, right? So you go flying this way, and I produce a wall right here, and you get stuck and pull back towards my wall or towards my sphere. Throw the ball. But there has to be a range to projection. Like, I can only project within. We have to come up with what is the Schwarzschild radius of a starship's gravity projection plates. Yeah, because I mean, storyline wise, if I can project a wall all the way over at your ship, then that's not, I mean, there's no point, right? It's like the transporter that Khan used in Into Darkness that can transport across the galaxy. There's no points now. There's no point in having a ship. I can just keep producing gravity walls at your ship from my planet 7 miles away or seven light years away. You know, I just keep producing gravity walls at your, you know. So I think the I think what we're going to do is this. We're going to say 10. There we go. Why is it? It also has like a really weird kerning. There. Weird. We're also going to do this, which is gravity radius. Let's say 1.5 kilometers. There we go. So this particular device there we go. So there we've limited its power, its radius to 1.5 kilometers. So ships are going to be thousands of kilometers away. Yeah, I agree. And how much power you can devote to it. Now, that could be one of those things where that's why it's super dangerous to be around a battleship, right? The battleships can produce, 100 exajoules of power or whatever, which means that it could throw a ball half a light year. And that makes it big and unpleasant. Whereas our little Corvette here can throw a ball up to 1.5 kilometers away. And gravity walls only up to 1.5 kilometers away. And can only put up to 2 exajoules of power into its walls. So, there's only so much the ship can do. So, yeah, that works. I like this. Yeah, and the limited size of what gravity well it can produce. I mean, by the nature of it, no, I guess it doesn't have to be a star. It's not generating a star. It's just generating a well. And it only has to be big enough to pull the ship in to its own well. How do we measure gravity? That's probably what we need to know. It's usually measured in G's, is what it's saying here. Gravity is a measurement of the gravimetry. Acceleration. I'm looking over here at this. In the SI system of units, standard unit of acceleration is 1 meter per second squared. Huh. Gravity is often measured also in Galileo's. Who knew? Galileo, Galileo, Galileo Figaro. The earth's above every running light for me. Hey, I'm done. No, I'm not really done. I'll never be done. So it looks like gravity is measured in Galileo's, which is units of cool. Yep. Gravimeter. Because like the Earth has different gravimetric pulls depending on where it is. Huh. Galileo. Huh. Who knew? There's a milligal and a microgal. Huh. Wow. There's actually quite a bit you can do with Galileo's. I find this fascinating. Because there's already a Newton. Right? So, gravitational field is a model used to explain the influences that a massive body extends into space around it. This is probably better. In the field model, rather than two particles attracting each other, the particles distort space-time via their mass. This is actually definitely better. And this distortion is what is perceived and measured as a force. In such a model, one states that matter moves in certain ways in response to the curvature of space-time, and that there is no gravitational force, or that gravity is a fictitious force. Because this is a general relativity. Uh-oh. Now it's getting complicated. because really we should be doing things in Einstein field equations. Wow. Well, okay. I feel like we've gone way down a rabbit hole here. Holy cow. Right? They become a Galleria. Galleria, Galleria, Galleria Figaro. Okay, well. Because actually, now that I think about it, we're clear from the show. That's what all these lights changing means. That means the show's over. We'll have to come back to this on Monday, I think. Because now I'm really thinking about this. I think we should at least say how much gravity potential the gravity plates can make. I feel like that's a big deal. Okay. Well then, thank you all for joining me today. It was good talking to you, Donald, really, especially. You've had a lot of really interesting and fascinating ideas. And so, really appreciate that. I saw Brent in here a little bit, but he's been busy, I can tell, which is okay. And I also appreciate seeing Jen in here for a little while, even though she had to tootle along, but that's okay. We've got all the stuff. We just talked about random cool things today that are part of this universe. So I want to just say I appreciate you all, and I will see you all on Monday. And until then, keep your eyes on the stars. Goodbye. Computer, good night.